One of the easiest ways to stay broke is not to spend wildly. It is to spend normally. That is the trap. People think financial damage arrives in dramatic form. A bad stock pick, a Vegas weekend, a luxury watch bought in a burst of ego, a trip you clearly could not afford, a single reckless decision that everyone around you can point to and say, well, there it is. That is why you are behind. Real life is not so theatrical. The truth is much more dangerous. Most wealth is not destroyed by one obvious mistake. It is destroyed by a long series of respectable ones. A car bought on monthly payments. A house treated like an automatic investment. A luxury justified as self-care. A fee that sounds small because it is expressed as a percentage. A subscription kept just in case. A rewards card used to rationalize overspending. A purchase made for the person you hope to become rather than the person you have already proven yourself to be. An expensive object renamed an investment because you do not want to admit it is simply a luxury. That is how money disappears, quietly, respectably, repeatedly. And because it disappears quietly, people do not resist it. They call it normal. That word, normal, has probably cost ordinary people more wealth than bad stock tips ever have. I have never been interested in lecturing people about coffee. You like good coffee? Fine. You like nice luggage? Fine. You love travel, books, fitness, dinners with friends, convenience, generosity, tools, art, or any other category that genuinely makes your life richer. Fine. I am not against spending. I am against mindless spending disguised as intelligent spending. I am against the sort of spending that sounds mature while quietly weakening the future. I am against paying for identity when what you really needed was structure. That is a very different thing. I have always believed that a rich life is not built by cutting every joy out of your existence. It is built by spending extravagantly on what matters to you and cutting ruthlessly on what does not. The problem is that most people never define what truly matters. So the money does not get directed, it just leaks. It leaks into small conveniences, big symbols, autopilot charges, emotional purchases, and a whole parade of things. They no longer even notice. Then they wake up years later and ask where it all went. It went to the gap they never protected. That gap is everything. The difference between what comes in and what goes out is where wealth begins. Not the salary by itself, not the title, not the neighborhood, not the brand of car. The gap a person with a high income and no gap is often just wearing a more expensive costume. A person with a moderate income and a disciplined gap can become very wealthy indeed. That is why I care so much about all the habits and purchases that quietly erase that gap while pretending to be sensible. The car is one of my favorite examples. Car dealers are some of the finest psychologists in business. They know that if they can get you thinking in monthly payments instead of total cost, the whole game shifts in their favor. Monthly payment is not the real price. It is a hypnotic suggestion. Stretch the term. Add the package. Add the warranty. Add the financing profit. Add the insurance burden. Add the fuel burden. Add the maintenance burden. Add the registration. Add the hidden social pressure that made you buy more machine than you needed in the first place. By the time the transaction is finished, what you have really bought is not transportation. It is years of reduced flexibility. That is an ugly trade. I am not against cars. I am against being manipulated by the wrong number. The serious buyer does not ask, what can I fit into my monthly budget? He asks, what is the total price? What is the full cost of ownership? And what does this do to the rest of my financial life? A truck is not a truck. It is a truck plus insurance, plus fuel, plus maintenance, plus the opportunity cost of the larger down payment, plus whatever future contribution to your investment account just quietly vanished because you wanted to feel like a truck owner. That is especially true of giant trucks and oversized vehicles bought for emotional reasons. America is full of people financing identity. They say they need the truck because one day they might haul something. They say they need the SUV because it feels safer or stronger or more adult. What they are really doing is purchasing an image of themselves and then paying interest on it for years. That is not rugged. That is expensive vanity. The same logic appears in home fitness equipment. A person buys the machine not because he already has a proven exercise routine, but because he wants to buy the fantasy that this machine will finally make him the kind of person who is disciplined. The machine lands in the house. For 3 weeks it feels like transformation, then it becomes furniture. People do this because buying a thing feels easier than building a habit, but habits are what change lives. Equipment without habit is just clutter with a receipt attached. I have made versions of this mistake myself, as most people have. That is partly why I distrust it so much. It is not the object that disappoints. It is the magical story you attach to it. Once the story dies, you are left with the object, the cost, and the realization that you were not buying the thing itself. You are buying imagined discipline. Imagined discipline is very expensive. Skincare, supplements, personal optimization products, and all the rest of the little performance rituals suffer from the same disease. There is always another miracle, another product, another protocol, another weekly purchase that promises to fix something deeper than the product could ever possibly reach. Much of this is not care. It is procrastination disguised as self-improvement. A person keeps buying the next possible solution because buying feels like movement. Meanwhile, the real habits that would matter remain unbuilt. That is a wonderful way to become a profitable customer and a poor steward of your own money. I prefer habits to products. I prefer consistency to novelty. I prefer one boring thing done long enough to work over 10 exciting things purchased and abandoned. Extended warranties are another perfect example of how fear gets monetized. The upsell always sounds responsible. Protect your purchase. Be safe. Be prudent. What is usually happening is simpler. A company is charging you a large premium for a low probability event because they know uncertainty makes human beings irrational. Many products never break in that period. Many repairs would have cost less than the warranty anyway. Many credit cards quietly extend manufacturer warranties already. Yet people pay because the feeling of prudence is emotionally satisfying. I would rather buy from reliable brands, understand my protections, and keep cash reserves for life's actual surprises. Self-insuring small risks is often one of the most financially intelligent things a stable person can do. Paying retail for emotional comfort every single time is how people stay poorer than necessary. Then there is Amazon or any of its digital cousins, where impulse buying became frictionless enough that people barely experience a decision at all. A little gadget, a little organizer, a little hack, a little upgrade. Most of these things are purchased because they promise easier living or better habits. Few of them deliver enough value to justify their cumulative cost. But because none of them looks serious by itself, the mind refuses to classify them as financially important. Over years, of course, those tiny choices become enormous. Small leaks are dangerous precisely because they are too polite to trigger alarm. And that is why I have always liked the idea of a rich life lived consciously. Once you know what you truly care about, you can become much more decisive elsewhere. If travel is your joy, wonderful. Spend well on travel. If convenience genuinely buys back time that matters deeply to you, fine. If health, food, beauty, tools, learning, generosity, or experiences are your real dials, then turn them up with confidence. But once that is defined, you must become merciless with everything else. Merciless is the right word, not because you are becoming cheap, because you are becoming intentional. And intentionality is what turns spending from leakage into design. One of the most absurd habits in modern finance is the renaming of luxuries as investments. Americans especially adore this game. A mattress becomes an investment in sleep. A blender becomes an investment in health. A deck becomes an investment in quality of life. A chair becomes an investment in productivity. A renovation becomes an investment in the house. Almost anything expensive can be dressed up in noble language. If the buyer wants to avoid the discomfort of simply admitting, "I want this because I like it," I have no issue with wanting things. I have an issue with lying. An investment has a serious chance of producing financial return. A luxury produces enjoyment. There is nothing dishonorable about a luxury. The dishonor enters when the buyer uses the word investment to anesthetize himself while spending beyond what his system can support. If you tell the truth, the question changes immediately. Not, is this an investment? But can I afford this inside the part of my plan designed for discretionary joy? That is a much cleaner question, and it protects people from financing lifestyle with the wrong pool of money. You should not be buying the mattress with future investment dollars while telling yourself it is basically investing in your health. That is how nice things quietly become structural damage. The house is where this delusion gets really expensive. There may be no purchase in America wrapped in more mythology than the primary residence. People say a house is always an investment. Number it can be. It can also be a giant lifestyle purchase sitting inside an emotionally charged cultural story. Mortgage interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, transaction costs, opportunity cost of the down payment, flexibility lost, neighborhood risk, job mobility risk, these all matter. Yet people skip them and cling to slogans like renting is throwing money away. I rented for years and was perfectly content to do so. In the right markets and at the right times, renting and investing the difference can be the far superior financial choice. Other times, buying makes perfect sense. The point is not ideology. The point is arithmetic plus honest life. But arithmetic has to come first. Most people reverse the order. They want the symbol and then try to defend it with math later. That is backwards. The same backwardness shows up in home renovations. People are convinced the deck, the kitchen, the basement, the bathroom, the wall removal, and the just one more thing will all pay for themselves eventually. Some projects recover part of their cost. Many do not. Nearly all cost more than initially imagined. But because renovation feels like improvement, people keep calling it investment when what they really mean is I want my house to feel nicer. Fine, just say that. Save for it, buy it honestly. Do not finance emotional satisfaction with debt and then tell yourself you were doing capital allocation. I dislike delusion because delusion is expensive. Asset-based advisor fees are another masterclass in silent wealth destruction. A 1% fee sounds tiny because human beings are terrible at understanding percentages compounded over long horizons. 1% sounds like a tip. It is not. It is a permanent claim on the very process that was supposed to buy your freedom. The account grows and the fee grows with it. The growth that could have compounded for you keeps getting skimmed. Over decades, the total bite can be shocking. People comparison shop for $5 groceries and then hand away six figures because 1% sounded so harmless. I am not against advice. I am against sloppy, lifelong economic surrender. There are times when a good advisor is worth it. Complexity exists. Transitions exist. Edge cases exist. But many ordinary households need far less guidance than they think and far more discipline than they admit. Give me low-cost index funds, automation, some tax awareness, and a person willing not to panic every 2 quarters, and I will take that over a lot of expensive hand-holding disguised as sophistication. Then there is the rewards point circus. I like rewards as much as anyone when they are genuinely additive. I do not like them when they become a moral excuse for overspending or carrying balances. Paying 27% interest to collect airline points is like stepping over $100 bills to pick up pennies. Yet people do it proudly. Why? Because the rewards feel like getting ahead. They are not getting ahead if they are chained to interest. They are theater. The same goes for status cards with annual fees. People barely justify. Lounge access, elite boarding, special medal, little ego rituals, dressed up as practical value. If you use the perks heavily, fine. If not, then you are paying for the sensation of importance. That is one of the oldest consumer tricks in the book. Identity is a profitable business. Companies know it. Consumers rarely admit it. This applies just as strongly to self-care spending. Self-care is a lovely phrase. It can also become an expensive disguise. A hard week, a rough month, a frustrating argument, an exhausting workday, and suddenly the brain wants relief. A massage, a brunch, a shopping trip, a little upgrade, a delivery order, some treat. Again, I am not against pleasure. But when a person uses money, he does not really have to buy temporary emotional relief. That is not self-care. That is pain financing. The mood lifts briefly, the bill remains. True self-care and personal finance looks very different. It looks like enough margin that pleasure can be enjoyed without poison attached. It looks like reserves. It looks like lower fixed costs. It looks like not having a low-level panic at the end of each month. Money set aside deliberately for joy is a sign of health. Using debt or drift to manufacture relief is a sign of fragility. Complex products and overcomplicated investment systems deserve their own chapter in this discussion because complexity has become one of the most fashionable ways to feel smart while staying poor. Infinite banking, obscure tax schemes, perpetual insurance pitches, hyperactive trading, whiteboard strategies, financial jargon, heavy ecosystems, built more to impress than to work. Complexity is wonderfully marketable because it flatters the buyer. Simple indexing, automated investing, low expenses, and staying the course sound too boring for people who want to feel they have discovered a secret. The problem is that the secret is often exactly the boring thing. I have seen more wealth built through simple, low-cost, repeatable investing than through all the circus acts combined. Complexity is not the same as sophistication. Often it is a distraction sold to people who feel behind and therefore become vulnerable to anything that promises speed or exclusivity. And then, of course, we have aspiration shopping, perhaps the most psychologically revealing category of all. This is when people buy the fantasy of the person they want to be. The planner that will make them organized, the course that will make them disciplined, the desk that will make them focused, the car that will make them confident, the sunrise deck that will make them serene, the expensive kitchen tool that will turn them into the kind of person who prepares beautiful, healthy meals every morning. They are not buying the object. They are buying a self. That self is often imaginary. And imagination finance too often becomes a liability. I would rather people ask a blunt question: do I already have enough to begin the behavior I claim I want? If the answer is yes, then the purchase is often unnecessary. If you want to watch the sunrise, you can go outside tomorrow. If you want to stretch, you can stretch with what you have. If you want to write, you can begin with a simple desk. If you want to get in shape, the first proof should not be the machine you bought, but the habit you kept. Once the behavior is real, then perhaps the object can enter honestly as an enhancement. That is a much cheaper and much saner path. All of these examples share a common structure. Waste follows ego. Waste follows fatigue. Waste follows unexamined norms. Waste follows the need to feel like a certain kind of person. Waste follows the refusal to distinguish between what actually enriches life and what merely performs enrichment. This is why I never want to reduce money to deprivation. Deprivation breeds rebellion. People cannot live forever in a system that feels like punishment. But clarity breeds freedom. Once you know what you love, what you use, what truly improves your daily existence, and what is simply noise, then spending gets easier, not harder. The guilt goes down, the waste goes down, the surplus goes up. The future stops getting starved by the present's endless little excuses. That is how wealth gets built in ordinary households, not by heroic denial, by intelligent direction, because over a lifetime. The person who avoids a handful of large, socially approved mistakes often outruns the person who chases perfect investments while quietly bleeding from every other part of life. The truck, the renovation, the advisor fee, the points trap, the aspiration purchases, the subscriptions, the self-care rationalizations, the house myth, the little and big things that every own does. Every own does not build wealth. That is worth remembering. I am perfectly happy for other people to spend however they wish. I do not need converts. But I do think a person should know the real cost of what he is normalizing. He should know what the monthly payment car means in future lost investing. He should know what the 1% fee means in foregone retirement freedom. He should know what the emotionally justified luxury means in years of reduced optionality. He should know what the unexamined habit means when repeated hundreds of times. Then let him choose. Choice without truth is manipulation. Choice with truth is adulthood. That is the line I care about. So no, I will never tell you to cut every joy. I will tell you to define your joys honestly. I will tell you to stop pretending symbols are investments. I will tell you to run the real numbers on the big decisions. I will tell you to stop financing ego and start funding freedom. I will tell you that normal spending can be one of the most dangerous forms of spending if it has never once been interrogated. And I will tell you something even more important than that. Money kept intelligently is often more powerful than money earned noisily. People talk constantly about earning more. Far fewer talk seriously about leaking less. Yet leakage is where many financial lives are lost. Plug enough leaks and even an ordinary income starts behaving like a much better machine. Keep enough dignity and intention in the system, and you can spend well on what matters while still watching your future grow stronger. That, to me, is a rich life. Not a cheap life, not a showy life, a rich life. And rich lives are built not by never spending, but by knowing the difference between what makes life fuller and what only makes it more expensive. That is the difference I trust. And over a lifetime, I believe it can be worth millions.